what are three hidden costs that many flippers will forget, especially if you're a new flipper? And I've forgotten about these as well when I was first starting out. So, number one is rough cost. What do I mean when I say rough cost? Things like rough electrical, rough plumbing, things behind the walls, right? It's easy to get caught up in the pretty stuff, right? What's in front of you on the walls. But as a flipper, you can't forget about what's behind those walls, especially when you're ripping drywall out, when you're ripping floors up, because when you're ripping vanities out, because you're gonna have to fix those things, right? If there's issues there. So you can't forget. It's important to make the house nice and presentable for the end buyer, but you're going to be stuck footing the bill for rough plumbing, rough electrical issues, things behind the walls that you need to fix. So number one is rough cost. Number two, holding cost. Holding cost is one of the biggest things that, especially if you're new, you may forget, right? I'm talking the electrical to keep it heated. Well, not heated, sorry. To keep the lights on. The consumers, right? The gas to keep it heated. I'm talking the insurance costs. I'm talking any finance type costs, right? Are you using a hard money lender, and how much does that hard money lender cost? There's a number of different holding costs that you need to ensure that you know what those holding costs are, because if you don't, that can get out of control really quick, especially if your renovation takes longer than you expected, right? Those holding costs keep stacking up. So I've said this in previous videos, that the velocity of money, especially in flipping houses, and one of those things is the holding cost, because holding costs, if you let a renovation take longer than you expect, those will stack up, and those will get hefty the longer it takes you to do that renovation. So holding costs are crucial to and one of the three hidden things that flippers don't remember, especially if you're new. Number three, contingency for items that you just don't know if they will pop up. I've had many times where, for example, one time we had a house where we were almost done with this house, and we had a drought at that time, no rain for a long time. And then we had rain. We were about to put carpet in, right? We were at that stage. It had it rain for a month and a half. Right? Our renovation was about 6 weeks. It rained, and all of a sudden, we had a flood in the basement, right? We ended up having to rip up the concrete, which we tried to snake it. We had to rip up that concrete. We pulled out a 14-foot root out of the storm drain. And so we had to replace all that storm drain and then re-concrete it. And that's a big cost, right? That's upwards. That could be upwards of $10,000. So those costs sometimes will rear their ugly head, and so you have to be aware of that. So I always put in about a 10% contingency. So, if your renovation is 50,000, put a 10% contingency in there, $5,000, and possibly even more. So you have to be aware of that. So number one are rough costs: rough electrical, rough plumbing, anything behind those walls, right? Number two is holding costs. Holding costs, those can get out of control pretty quickly, especially if your renovation takes longer than you expect. And number three, contingency. Always keep a 10%, at least a 10% contingency in place in case things are more expensive, or in case something big comes up during your renovation. So those three hidden costs, those can be something that you forget about, especially if you're a new flipper, a new real estate investor. So if you enjoy this content, follow X Home Builds. We'll see you next time.